So, do you think that, like 100 years from now, should our species still be alive, that we will have evolved to develop some sort of more quote-unquote superhuman abilities from where we are now?
Only within the context of, like, what technology would allow. No, not really. No, not really.
Do you think that, like, maybe 1,000 years, potentially?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, superpowers don't really seem to exist in nature, you know? And I mean, we already have, like, you know, within the context of real life, our superhuman power is, like, our neuroplasticity, our ability to think, our ability to create, you know. We can write music, and we can even program AI that will write music for us. That's human beings' superpower.
Very eloquently put, sir.
Thanks.
A little bit too eloquent for this show, but, you know, what are you gonna do? Welcome back to the Jony Horror Podcast. I am your host, Jony Horror, one of your hosts anyways, and with me, once again, my partner in crime, my co-host, Kalen Behrman, ladies and gentlemen. And we are back at Eastrail to continue our discussion of the Eastrail 177 trilogy and the sequel, long-awaited sequel. We just didn't know it was a long-awaited sequel.
That's right.
To Unbreakable Split. Kalen, can you transport yourself back to, like, 2015, early 2016, and tell me what you remember about Split, maybe before you actually saw the film?
Yeah, so, I was one of those unapologetic I love M. Night Shyamalan people.
Yes.
And so, when The Visit came out in 2015, I went and checked out The Visit in theaters, and I was very happy with it. It wasn't like a full-blown Shyamalan classic banger.
Yeah.
But it was like, to use a baseball expression, he had a clean double. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, he made a good movie. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, M. Night's back doing some stuff. And then the trailers for Split looked cool.
Yes.
And I actually already liked Anya Taylor-Joy, which might sound silly because most people had no idea who she was at that point. But I had seen this little ditty called The Witch. Mm-hmm. And I had really liked The Witch by this unknown named Robert Edgers. And so I already liked her. I already liked James McAvoy. And the movie just looked bonkers, so I was pretty interested in it.
Yeah.
I didn't go see it opening night. I was waiting for somebody to want to go watch it with me. And I will not ever forget, randomly, and I believe this was the opening night of the movie, it might have been a couple days later, I got 3 text messages in a row from you. And the 3 text messages read, go see Split. The second text message read, go see Split right now. The third message read, don't read anything about it, just go see Split. So I was like, okay, I have to go see this movie.
I remember a very similar sort of situation for myself where I went and saw The Visit, and was pleasantly surprised because, as we'll probably discuss later on, M. Night had not been doing very well. He had kind of bomb after bomb after bomb. I think, like, I might get some of this misconstrued, but I'm pretty sure it was like The Happening, The Last Airbender, and After Earth were all kind of in the same, like, 10-year period, give or take, and so people had just kind of given up hope.
People wrote him off.
Yeah. And studios had stopped giving him vast amounts of money, so he had to resort to smaller stories, which
I believe The Visit was self-funded even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a film that I would actually very much like to discuss, because I do think it is now, like, oddly enough, even though it hasn't been a super duper long amount of time, feels kind of like a underrated little gem of a movie. But was very pleasantly surprised by that. I think this is his follow-up, if I remember correctly, and it felt very much in the same vein. Like, cool, like, low budget, M. Night's just, you know, pumping out these kind of horror thriller movies, and James McAvoy looks scary in it. I was in, again, the same ballpark, loved The Witch, saw Anya Taylor-Joy in the trailer, and I was like, oh, cool, this is the next thing I saw her in, so I'm pretty sure it's the next big thing that she had done, and it was like, all right, cool, this girl is, you know, doing it, like, she's making it happen, which is great. And I went with my wife. We went and saw it on opening night, I believe, or the Thursday night showing, and it was a very, very enjoyable movie. Had a lot of fun watching it, and then the last 2 minutes of the movie play out, and I was screaming at the fucking TV screen in this movie theater, and my wife is like, "What?" And I'm like, "God!" One of the best surprises I've ever experienced at a movie, and we're gonna talk all about that. That was my viewing experience, without giving too much away about what this movie eventually is. What was it like for you when you went and saw this movie?
Well, I mean, I enjoyed the movie a lot, and I think that this is a movie, I mean, not to jump too far ahead, but I think this is a movie that certainly stands on its own two legs. Like, I don't think that the ending and the big reveal is the reason that this movie has value.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, so it's like when the certain music hit, I knew then. Like, when the music hit, I went, "Oh my God." And I think I said, "Oh my God," like, audibly in the theater. And then when you cut to that one moment that I think we'll save for later, but when you cut to that and that happens, yeah, I made some noise. I actually... So, like, you know me, man. I'm a very polite person. Yeah. Like, I'm a very polite, respectful kind of person.
Absolutely.
I made people in the theater around me angry. And one girl said something, and I did not care. It was just like, you be angry. I'm having the time of my life
What was said? Like, what did you do that elicited the response?
I just said something like, well, I would give it away.
Oh, yeah, I gotcha. But
I said something like, "Oh my God, it's this."
Yeah.
And then some bimbo next to me was just like, "Okay." And I was just like, well, shut up. Be having fun with me or be quiet. Like, you know what I mean? This is a good moment for me. Why are you trying to ruin it? And the friend that I was with was really embarrassed. And I was like, who cares? Fuck her. You know, we're having fun. Yeah, anyway.
Well, it sounds like that you and I almost are on like the exact same track with the lead up to this film and our feelings and thoughts during the movie. Because I'm pretty sure like my wife was embarrassed too. She's like, "What are you even going on about?" And I'm like, "You just don't understand how this is something that I've waited almost my whole life for, and no one told me that's what I was walking into."
Right. It's like, imagine if you walked into like one of the most important moments of your entire life and like no one had prepared you for it. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. But more on that later. Like, we're gonna spoil anything. You know why you're here. If you're tuned into this podcast, I hope you understand
what's going on.
But we're trying to build some fucking heft for the discussion to come. But speaking of discussions and all that sort of thing, you watch the news. It's terrible. It's unpleasant. There's horrors all around the world, and we're gonna continue that trend, discussing horrors in the Jony Horror News. Here at the Jony Horror News, we talk about anything new and notable in the world of horror. I have a couple of topics I'd like to talk to you about. Some stuff I want to get caught up on from the last time we sat down. First and foremost, the movie that you were probably most anticipating last time we discussed, you said you were going to go see it in the next couple of days. Have you seen said film?
Did.
Yes.
Yeah, Late Night with the Devil.
Yes, sir.
With the slowly becoming a low-key legend, David Dastmalchian.
God, I'm so happy for that man. I just hope that he doesn't turn out to be like some sort of scumbag that we're going to find out about, because I genuinely enjoy him as a person and I'm very happy for his solid run he's been on. Late Night with the Devil, what did you think?
I thought it was pretty awesome, man. I have some complaints. I had one real complaint. I didn't think without spoiling anything here for the audience, because I want y'all to see that movie and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
For me, the very last, not the last 10 minutes, not the last 5 minutes, but the last 2 minutes, the very, very, very ending, didn't totally work for me.
Yeah.
And I was really frustrated by that, because it felt kind of out of place, and I felt like it felt weird to me, that it was there, no one had seen that and been like, it doesn't totally work. Maybe we should reshoot that. Maybe we should cut that. So I was a little bit disappointed by that on opening night. But upon reflection, I mean, I just think it was too cool of a movie, too unique, Mm-hmm. But we don't get movies like that.
Yeah.
It was doing its own thing, and it was original and fresh, and it was good. It was very well, every aspect of it, there was a lot of craft on hand, whether it be from, set design to the actors to the script. It was just a really lovingly crafted film that was engaging and fun and scary. And, man, ultimately a real banger.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Did you, by chance, have a opportunity to watch the review I posted for it? I'm going to take that as a no.
No, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I actually watched it with Sandy. We discussed your review of it.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
I think my only big gripe with it was, and this kind of plays into the ending a little bit too, because I felt like this made the ending slightly problematic, was the format they chose.
That ending didn't fit the format.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like, all right, cool, you just broke
the format at the end and no explanation.
Yeah, exactly. And it didn't add up. Which is where I was like, hey, we could have just not made this an entirely found footage thing, because it really doesn't work.
And the backstage aspects of it didn't really even make sense, really.
No, it didn't, because, who's recording this stuff?
Right.
Who's walking around with one of those big ass cameras
during in the 1970s?
Exactly.
Yeah, like
that's my thing. And also like
you're not walking around with an iPhone recording what's happening.
Exactly. And these are like private discussions that these characters are having. Like so many of them are like between two people and they're seriously heated and you're like, okay, so some dude is just like off to the side filming all of this?
Yeah.
Like, and also the way camera equipment works, specifically back then, somebody's holding a mic over them too? Like,
and somebody's chopping all of this in a very specific way behind the scenes, right? Like,
exactly.
To look that way, like, yep.
So that was like, that's my big thing. My big thing that, like, really, like, legitimately, like, I was, like, scratching my head over while I was watching the movie, which is a no-no. You don't want your audience to be thinking about that sort of stuff whilst watching the movie. I was like, dude, if you just done it in a traditional format and inserted the TV clips, money. Beautiful. That's your thing right there. All that said, that movie was so engaging to me. I was so like caught up in the story and could not wait to see what happened next.
Yep.
David Dismalchin is so charismatic and so much fun to watch in that role. And I thought the story was very, very interesting. And there's some fantastic visuals and legitimately scary stuff in it. So, our little nitpicks aside, folks, I do think that if you have not seen Late Night with the Devil, it is absolutely worth your time. It is going to be streaming on Shudder sometime this month. So, if you have a Shudder account, you can watch that shit for free. So
big thumbs up from us.
Yes. Last time we sat down, we had seen stills from Beetlejuice, and the trailer like dropped the very next day. So we don't get a whole lot, but I gotta say that the one line we get from Beetlejuice where he says the juice is loose, like I got the biggest fucking smile on my face. I was like, sure, that's good, man. That's really good right there. I don't think I need much more. Like, I'm gonna go see it, you know? There are weird things where you're like, this is just me being a realist where I'm like, why does Winona Ryder have the exact same fucking haircut she did when she was like 10 years old? And why does her mother have the exact same hair she did, you know?
Because Tim Burton still has the same haircut that he had when he was 10 years old.
Hey, you're actually not wrong there. So, you got me.
That's why.
Hey, how it works.
It's a reflection of the filmmaker.
Have you heard any buzz about The First Omen at all?
I saw that it was getting pretty good reviews.
Have you seen the original?
Oh, yeah. I love The Omen.
Okay. I saw it. I'm working on my review right now.
You saw The First Omen?
I saw The First Omen.
Oh, okay.
And by the time this drops, my review will have been out, so this is not, like, going to be, you know, spoiling my review at all. I remember seeing the teaser trailer. It's like, it was just like a 1 minute spot, and it's like all in reverse. And I remember going, it doesn't look bad, which was like the thing. I was like, it doesn't look bad. And whatever they're doing with their marketing, interesting. And that kept on being the thing. They released another trailer that I didn't watch because I was satisfied with what I saw. And their promotional material, very like 1970s-esque. And I was like, I like everything that I'm seeing. And I was like, I have this feeling like it might be okay. Like this might be a weird like one-off situation where this franchise, like as far as I'm concerned, like the Omen franchise, really, there's a TV movie that I haven't watched, like the Omen 4, that I hear is not half bad, but out of the 1, 2, 3 in the remake that I've seen, like they're all good to not bad, which says a lot. So when I heard the whispers that this movie was actually like low key pretty good, I was like, just don't get excited, don't get too excited,
right.
Because I was already like, I feel like it might be good. I fucking see this movie.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm on it.
Yeah. Particularly if you're a fan of the original, it's there, man.
I'm actually a pretty big fan of the original Omen. I watched it as I watched it as like an 8-year-old kid, which I know that's a rough movie for that age, but I'm a pretty big fan of that movie. Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's up there. It's right there with The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. Like it's those two in the Omen that like kind of make the unholy trilogy of religious horror. Hell yeah! I think that maybe the Omen doesn't get all the credit it deserves because it is so clearly a response to Rosemary's Baby and then The Exorcist. But I think it's a really good little flick, and
I mean, arguably, like it has a slightly more pulpy like feel to it, just given the content. But it's a more fun movie. Like oddly enough, it's certainly more fun than Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist. Like you're unraveling this mystery, but also like terribly dark. You're dealing with this man who has this son, his adopted son, but it is his son that he realizes he has to kill, and that seems terribly impossible as a parent. So to be put, hey, Antichrist or save the world. Like, I'm going to tell you guys right now, if I found out my son was the Antichrist, cool. Fuck you guys. Let him reign supreme. I don't give a fuck. But yeah, all that said, First Omen, there's some fucking shit in there that I have not seen in a movie before, man, and it is absolutely worth your time. So
okay, I'm very interested in that. So like, I'm always a little bit skeptical about when people go back to the well of kind of like a classic, similar with like they're doing like that Rosemary's Baby prequel.
See, that I have not heard about.
Oh yeah, like Apartment 7B. So do you remember in Rosemary's Baby? Minor spoilers for the very beginning of Rosemary's Baby. When they move into their apartment, they find out the girl that had been living there before jumped out of the window and killed herself.
Oh yeah.
This is her story.
Interesting.
So it's like an immediate prequel to Rosemary's Baby, which is one of those things where it's like I want that to be good. Like I want to be excited about it, but I'm also very skeptical of whether or not it will be good. But sometimes this stuff is good. Like you were just saying the Omen sequels are good. I was so skeptical about like the Psycho 2, and I ended up loving that movie.
Psycho 2 is one of the best sequels ever.
It's a great movie. Yeah. So like sometimes you just gotta have an open mind and give something a shot. So that's cool. I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, there's some stuff in it that is slightly contradictory to what you see in the OG, but the way they do it and kind of how you would see how like certain events would unfold and how the narrative might get changed like in that world, like it almost makes sense, like to a way that like I was like, well, that's not how it is in the original movie, but I can see why so and so would say this in the original movie because of X, Y, and Z. So it's very, very smart in the way it deals with its continuity. So you're a fan of X and Pearl, I take it? You watched the Maxine trailer?
Yep.
That movie looks fucking dope, man.
That looks to me like it's going to be my favorite of the bunch.
That was my thought as well.
Yeah.
Like that they're doing, was it Night Stalker? What the fuck is his name? Yeah.
Yep. The Night Stalker.
Was it Richard Ramirez? Is that who it was?
I don't remember the real name.
But I like that whole thing. Kevin Bacon's in there looking all sorts of Jack Nicholson from Chinatown. Love that. There's so many actors in that movie, and it just looks like all kinds of balls to the walls, like 80s slasher.
Well, it's funny because I see people saying, like, okay, it's getting old having your movies set in the 80s. I don't care. Yeah. I love it. I want my movies in denim jackets, dripping with neon.
Yeah.
And 80s pop music that makes me very happy.
I thought about that too. I was like, oh, another 80s movie, but I was like, I don't know. Like, I have not seen any of the quote-unquote 80s resurgence movies, you know, obviously Stranger Things and all that. Like, I don't think I've seen any of them that actually have gone to what, like, the grimy, dirty aesthetic of what, like, trashy 80s slashers were. Yep. So that's why I'm watching this and going, no, that's the good stuff right there, man. That's not going to be boring at all. That's not going to be a retread. It's not going to be, like, fucking glamorizing shopping malls and, you know, pinball machines and shit. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited about that. Looks just Mia Goth. Just like fucking what a weird like little trilogy that just like within like a year has existed, you know. It's so trippy to me, but yeah, already like, you know, those other two movies are pretty iconic, and like you said, this one looks like it might be the best of the bunch. So, and last but not least, we have gotten a trailer for Joker 2.
I don't know how to say it. Folie
yeah.
Folie du?
I've
heard a couple different ways of saying it.
Yeah.
It means shared madness.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Or madness of two.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Looks good to me, man. When we first found out they were doing a Joker movie, I was not interested in a Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. Like, I didn't really care. It seemed like a weird project to me. It seemed like kind of a waste of time. And then when the first trailer hit, that big trailer, I was like, oh, I can't wait for this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I was so excited for it. And I know that movie is a little bit polarizing. I liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty great. And when I heard they were doing a sequel, especially after hearing Todd Phillips seem like he was leaning away from doing a sequel in the first movie interviews, I wasn't super excited about it. I wasn't like, oh, well, this is what we need, a sequel to the Joker movie. But seeing that trailer, I'm pretty excited. I thought it looked pretty cool. I like that it. I liked it instead of going back to we're gonna riff on Scorsese. Well, I think it's cool that it's going back to golden age musicals.
Yeah.
I think some people maybe aren't even, I don't mean this sounds snobby, I think some people maybe aren't even catching that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
But I like that. I like that he's like, well, the first one was a riff on these 70s and 80s, you know, neo-noir type of movies. Let's go back further and do a change up in genre. I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, well, like, when I heard musical, like, it didn't quite register. I was like, well, all right, well, Lady Gaga's in it. And I was like, I think it would take really a hell of an idea and a hell of a script and a pitch and all to get Joaquin Phoenix to come back and do this role that he already, like, you already won, you know?
Yep.
You went out on a high. Like, yeah, like...
Yeah. He won an Academy Award for Best Actor. I mean, that's...
Yeah.
You can't do much better than that.
Exactly. So, like, it would really take, like, something to get him to come back and retread this character that, like...
Including large piles of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That couldn't hurt. Yeah, so, like, when I saw the trailer, I was like, that was immediately what I thought about. I was like, oh, they're, like, fucking pulling from, like, Singing in the Rain and shit. That's what this movie is going to be, like, an homage to. And I was like, that's actually kind of cool, because... I can't think of anything that is doing anything like that right now. Right. So, and Lady Gaga is just fucking awesome and easy on the eyes, and I've been impressed with anything she's done as far as like her cinematic chops. So,
yeah.
It'll be very interesting to see.
I also like, I'm not like a Lady Gaga like fan per se, but like I think she's musically relatively impressive. And I think she's been good on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to it. Again, it's one of those weird things where it's like, that very much seemed like a one-off movie. Not really sure like
Totally.
what story there is to continue with here. She also doesn't even look like she's proper Harleen Quinzel.
No.
You know?
She doesn't seem to be a doctor.
Of course, you know, he is very much an unreliable narrator, so who knows. But we will find out coming this fall.
That's right.
Well, I am a little thirsty, a little hungry. Figure we should swing on by the restaurant, maybe grab a bite, and have a drink over at Jony's Well. So, here at Jony's Well, we just talked about alcohol and drinks and drinking because we're both bartenders, and you know, what better way to get warmed up for a feature film than a stiff one, a drink.
No judgment, though.
You do you. Kalen, what are you drinking tonight, buddy? What are you literally
what am I
drinking
physically
right
drinking? This is a Beach Plum LaCroix, sparkling water. They taste kind of like Capri Sun flavored
Hey,
sparkling waters.
that sounds nice.
Yeah.
You get the reminisce about the childhood without all the, you know, sugar giving you cancer. So
Exactly. That's the idea. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, I like these.
I am drinking for both of us tonight. I am enjoying myself a nice Jack and Coke. So, but if you were going to throw on Split for a group of your friends and you were bartending and you wanted to serve them drinks, what drink would you serve with Split?
So I had to think about this one.
It was a hard one.
Yeah, it's a hard one, and I don't know that I love my answer, but so Split is low key kind of like a fucked up movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Like there's a lot of really dark stuff in this movie.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of really dark subject matter covered. And every time I watch this movie, I find myself going, "Wow, I really like this movie," and I go, "Wow, this movie makes me sad." So I wanted something that would make you happy and was crushable. That was my thought. So I'm gonna go with a classic Tom Collins, a gin Tom Collins.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know, a classic gin, a classic Tom Collins is going to be made with gin. Typically London dry gin, but you can also use an Old Tom if you're feeling fancy. And you're just going to use about 2 ounces of gin with about 3/4 of an ounce of fresh squeezed lemon juice, about 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup, and you're going to shake that up. You're going to strain that over ice into a Collins glass, into a nice tall glass, and then you're going to hit it with about 3 ounces of soda water. And what you're left with is sort of like a sparkling, hard gin lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, they are lovely to drink. They are sunshine in a glass. They are easy to drink.
Yes.
And they get you there. They're very crushable and they get you there. So,
yeah, hey, that's
big
great.
fan of the Tom Collins myself.
That is a great answer. I went through a Tom Collins phase.
I never got out of my Tom Collins phase. Me and Tom Collins are real good buddies.
Good for you guys. What a friendship. I went just full into a lot of times when I think about these movies, I try to think about either a theme or something that I can do an interesting spin on. Very rarely do I take the just blatantly obvious route, which is what I had to do today because I was not feeling inspired at all. So, what I decided to go with was a banana daiquiri with a twist. It is a banana split daiquiri. And the reason I went with this was obviously the split part, the whatever, fuck it, I got that in there. But
This is the effort you can expect today, folks. Banana split daiquiri.
So, as we'll find out in our threequel, Elijah Price's color scheme is purple, David Dunn's color scheme is green, and Kevin Wendell Crumb's color scheme is actually yellow. So your banana daiquiri is fucking yellow.
Boom.
What makes it a banana split daiquiri? So this is what you're gonna do, folks. You're gonna take your glass. You're gonna do like a little drizzle of chocolate. Extra points if you make the chocolate drizzle look like splits in glass. You're welcome. In the blender, you're gonna throw a scoop of ice. Ounce of banana liqueur, ounce of just a straight silver rum, half an ounce of Malibu coconut rum, half an ounce of coconut milk, 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice, a banana. You're going to blend it all up. You're going to dump that in the glass that you have hit with your zigzaggy chocolate syrup, and then you are going to top it off with whipped cream, a little bit of chocolate drizzle on top, and a motherfucking cherry. There you go, folks.
That drink sounds dumb as hell, but it probably tastes real good.
It's in a fucking milkshake, baby.
Hard to say no to a boozy milkshake, y'all.
Now, that's essentially a dessert right there, and, Kalen gave you an actual proper beverage. Somewhere in there you gotta have a meal. Would you consider this an eating movie?
Oh gosh.
It's not an eating movie, right?
I wouldn't say it's not an eating movie, but it's not an eating movie.
Yeah.
But I would say that this isn't the best eating movie because this one comes out hot.
Yeah.
And it is getting your attention early.
Yeah.
And it's telling a dense story pretty quickly in the movie. Yeah. So I would say that it's not the most ideal eating movie.
Yeah. And there is actually some stuff in there that is particularly towards the middle-ish of the film that is just very unsettling and definitely makes you lose your appetite. So
make you not feel so great.
Maybe if you are really starving, get the food in before James McAvoy gets in the car. This is like a first act food movie, right? Yeah.
Like, get a burrito and eat it quickly.
All right. Well, I'm feeling nice and full and just very diabetic right now. So we are going to leave this restaurant and head on over to our next section entitled Blah, Blah, Blah. You've seen it all before. What? So, here at Blah, 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 you've seen it all before, we talk a little bit about the film. We're going to introduce the film. This is M. Night Shyamalan's 2016 horror thriller Split. And, Kalen, you did such a good job last time. Now I'm going to throw the plot over to you.
Alrighty. So Split is about a young woman who is a high school aged girl who is at a birthday party with some of her contemporaries, I believe from like an art class or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they are kidnapped. Very early in the movie, they are kidnapped and they are taken to an isolated room. We don't know where they are or why they are there. And a strange man seems to be holding them there. And the real sell on this movie is that man begins behaving very peculiarly and appears to have dissociative identity disorder. And that's kind of the big sell of the movie is these girls are kidnapped, and the guy kidnapping them seems to be changing personalities.
Yeah.
And that's the pitch.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Always hate plot summaries. They're like my least favorite part of anything. So, a little bit about the behind the scenes in regards to Split. So, this will all be taken from the Wikipedia page for Split. So, big shout out to anybody who has contributed to this page. We could not do it without you. Shyamalan conceived of the idea for Split years before he wrote the screenplay. He explained, "In this case, I had written the character a while ago, and I had written out a few scenes of it, so I even had dialogue written out, which is unusual for me. It sat there for a long time, and I really don't have a clear reason why I didn't pull the trigger earlier. But this felt like the perfect time to do it, with the type of movies I'm doing now and the type of tones I am interested in. Humor and suspense." On October 2nd, 2015, James McAvoy was cast in the film to play the lead, replacing Joaquin Phoenix. Hey.
Wow.
Let's have a beat right there. Can you see Joaquin Phoenix in this role?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so in a role that I think that not many people would have really nailed, I think that Phoenix is one of the guys that would have, besides McAvoy. Joaquin Phoenix obviously did have a relationship with M. Night Shyamalan.
Yes.
He was a star in Signs and in The Village.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had a relationship.
Yeah, that it would have been interesting to see that, play out. Because I agree. Like, I think I just read that earlier today for the first time. I don't think I knew that before. And I was like, ooh, damn.
I didn't know that. That's my first time hearing that.
We'll get to him in a minute. Like, McAvoy's, undeniable in this. But that is a very interesting what if to me. Particularly because, as I said before, M. Night Shyamalan got Joaquin Phoenix to give, one of my favorite performances of his in Signs. So,
that kind of, I feel like that was kind of one of the launch pads for Joaquin Phoenix's career as well. Was his couple of movies with M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
In the early odds. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I had seen Gladiator, and then I saw Signs, and I'm sure he did something in there, but it's always, in my mind, that's the jump. He does Gladiator, and then he does Signs, and, obviously he had done many other things
he'd
before.
done more work. He had been in 8mm.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, too.
Yeah, he had been working as an actor, but...
Yeah. On October 12th, 2015, Anya Taylor-Joy, Betty Buckley, Jessica Sula, and Haley Lou Richardson were added to the cast. On October 27, 2015, Universal Pictures came on board to release the film and title it as Split. The character of Kevin had been in one of the early drafts of Shyamalan's Unbreakable, but he pulled the character out, stating there were too many balancing issues at the time. With Split, he brought in some of the scenes he had written for Unbreakable around Kevin. The film ends with the appearance of Bruce Willis's character David Dunn from Unbreakable, who makes a comment in reference to the previous film, placing Unbreakable and Split within the same narrative universe. Shyamalan requested permission to incorporate the character from Walt Disney Studios, which had produced Unbreakable. Shyamalan met with Sean Bailey about the use of this character. They came to a gentleman's agreement where Bailey agreed to allow the use of the character in the film without a fee, and Shyamalan promised that Disney would be involved in the sequel if developed. Shyamalan was very secretive about Willis's involvement in Split, removing the final scene from the film for test audiences. The cameo was shown at the 2016 Fantastic Fest and the 2016 AFI Fest months before its theatrical release. As with The Visit, you were right, Shyamalan funded the film himself. Principal photography on the film began November 11, 2015 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Reshoots occurred on June 2016. During post-production, Sterling K. Brown's role as Shaw, Dr. Fletcher's neighbor, was cut from the film, as Shyamalan felt that his scenes were ultimately unnecessary. McAvoy broke his hand in a scene where he was supposed to punch a metal door but missed the soft section of the door he intended to hit. All right, so there's a lot to dissect in that little bit right there, so we're just going to kind of take it beat by beat. When we discussed Unbreakable, we talked about how Shyamalan originally wrote a 3-arc narrative for David Dunn. He had his origin, his struggles, and then his finale, and then he found that the origin was the most interesting part of the story, so he cut everything else out and focused on that. So that's where the character of Kevin Wendell Crumb, originated, and pretty much the only person who really knew about that was, Shyamalan. Mm-hmm. So, I find that all very interesting that, so much of that was played so close to the chest, that the scenes or the scene with Bruce Willis at the end was removed from test screening so it wouldn't leak.
I like that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I also really, really like the gentleman's agreement that, hey man, if you do it, if you do manage to do your threequel, just get us in on it.
Cut us in on the deal.
You can throw them in there for free.
Yep.
I was like, that's boss right there. I wish more shit was done that way in Hollywood,
I think Hollywood used to be more that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hollywood used to be a little bit more cooperative and a little bit less bureaucratic than it is now.
There's another bit that I also read this earlier today that Sterling K. Brown, who is a fantastic actor.
I'm so sorry. Can you remind me what I might know Sterling K. Brown from?
Sterling K. Brown, if you you saw Shane Black's The Predator, right?
I did not.
Oh no.
Yeah. I'm ashamed to admit that.
No, it's not a great movie. It's a fun movie. Mm-hmm. That's just what popped into my head because he's so good in that. He's in a lot of different things. American Crime Story is the big thing where he's plays one of the lawyers that's going against O.J. Simpson, I believe. But let's see. What else has he been in? Oh, he's in Black Panther. There you go. You've seen that one.
I have seen Black Panther.
Yeah. Wow. Found a blind spot for Kalen Behrman, folks.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. That doesn't happen too often.
But he's a great actor. I've enjoyed him in everything that I've seen him in, and it's weird to me that this character just you never existed. That's how good when you're editing something, how you can just feel the flow of stuff and be yeah, this is just not necessary. We're just gonna cut this out.
Yeah.
I hope he got paid.
He got paid. He shot all of his shots.
Yeah.
He got paid.
But yeah, and that's also I don't see one of the great things about Split is that it just for a 2-hour movie, it doesn't feel like it has a lot of fat on it.
No.
No,
not at all. It's a really lean movie.
And I don't see where anything else would fit in, The story is very just like, like, I don't know, like, I just picture this movie as a straight fucking line, you know?
It's a tight story. Yeah. I've actually seen the deleted scenes.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've seen the Sterling K. Brown stuff. Yeah, he definitely didn't. I mean, cutting it was the right call. Like, it's... There's nothing wrong with it. If this were a mini series or a TV show, those scenes would have totally made sense. Yeah. Because it's just, it fleshes out the psychologist character. Yeah. Fleshes out her character. He's her neighbor. They seem to have a pretty good friendship. There's a little bit of a, like, crushing on a younger man thing going on. Yeah. And it fleshes out her experience of the story. Yeah. Because she's reflecting on what she's thinking and feeling with her neighbor. This is, by the way, to the best of my memory. I watched this in like 2017, so I'm just doing my best here. Yeah. But it kind of fleshes out her experience of the movie. But then when you watch the movie, you don't need her experience of the movie fleshed out. No. You know what I mean? She's not the point of view character, and it kind of makes her more of a point of view character than is necessary. Yeah. So I do feel bad for Sterling K. Brown to have a whole performance in a movie like that cut out. Must really hurt. But it does seem to me like that was the clear-cut movie. I feel like Shyamalan sometimes is really good at knowing when to cut it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that is really like the hallmark of a great creator. Speaking as someone who, has... many a time, like, cut out stuff that I legitimately love from my reviews and stuff, where I'm like, oh, God, I fucking love that bit, it's hilarious, but I'm like, I'm probably the only person who's going to think it's hilarious, right. And I can get my video down from 6 minutes and 30 seconds down to 6 minutes if I just cut out this whole thing, and that's so much easier for people to click on, so, like, in that sense, like, it takes, like, a good... someone who understands narrative structure and who knows what is important to be able to kill their darlings, and when people, do that, and it's fun. You can go back to, like, some deleted scenes and stuff like that in other movies, and you'd be like, yeah, this is totally unnecessary, that bit. So, as we've said before, and as we will probably continue to say on this podcast, props to M. Night, because the man knows what he's doing.
He does.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty much as far as, like, behind the scenes stuff. This is not like a, Jaws situation or anything like that, where there is much turmoil going on behind the scenes. Sounds like this was a pretty easy, cut and dry shoot. Probably had to, do some pickups some for their reshoots, but, like, a lot of times when I feel like the idea of reshoots has gotten a lot better. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like 10 years ago, if you heard reshoots, it was like, oh God, the production's in trouble. Yeah. And I feel like now it's just like standard. Like, oh yeah, we got to go get this. Oh, we didn't get this. This scene doesn't quite work as well as we were intending. Like, it's just normal shit, Yeah,
I think a lot of people now budget pickups into their time budget and their money budget, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think just giving yourself a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah, absolutely. Wise. Yeah. Because you never know what can go wrong during the course of making a film.
Shooting movies is crazy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's a wild thing to do. Like, giving yourself a little bit of extra slack, I think, is smart. Yeah.
It's always good to give yourself extra slack. It's always good to give yourself good stuff, which is our next section. Ooh. Look at that segue, motherfuckers. Boom. Here at the good stuff, we discuss the stuff we liked about the movie. Surprise, surprise. All right, Kalen, take it away. Tell me a good thing.
Good stuff.
Tell me a good thing about Split.
A good thing about Split. Jeez. Well, one of the things I have here in my notes is that it only took me I got to 4 minutes into the movie, And you think about, like, when you start a movie, there's, like, other things that come up that aren't even the movie.
Yeah.
It took me till the 4-minute mark to have to start furiously jotting down good stuff. 4 minutes. That's how long that took me. So, similar to Unbreakable, I think this movie had incredibly rich storytelling right from the jump.
Yeah.
In the first 4 minutes of the movie, you get that Casey is kind of a self-ostracized student, right? That she doesn't quite fit in with her classmates who are being really nice to her.
Yeah.
You get that there's something going on with her, and then immediately we have Crumb in the car, kidnapping the girls. We have him cleaning up the little bit of mess on the car door. We have Casey being smarter and more alert than the other two girls in the moment.
Yes.
We have all of this rich storytelling laying down the groundwork for the whole movie, and it's happening minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
And you have this that kind of, we talked about this with Unbreakable, where like right in the opening of the movie, you're just doing so much.
Yes.
And that was something I liked about this, was right in the opening of the movie, you're doing so much.
Yeah, I think for this, so I should really, like, say this right out the gate. This is only my second time watching Split.
Wow, okay.
Like, all the way through. Maybe my third, like, I might have, there's a good chance I rewatched it when I bought it on DVD, you know, but that theater experience, like, kind of overpowers everything else.
Sure.
But I know I have not watched it in a long time, so I was very much just kind of like, as like almost, you know, an audience member, not knowing a lot about this movie except the little, you know, chunks toward the end. What happened. So a lot of that stuff, like, I thought about in retrospect. I was thinking about, oh yeah, she's over there by herself. She's getting, like, they're saying that she purposely gets into trouble.
Yep.
Like, hardcore gets herself into trouble.
She yells at the teachers.
Yeah.
Gets attention a lot. And they say she tried to run away from home.
Yeah. And why would somebody do something like that?
Yeah.
And I did not remember that bit at all, which we will get to later. And
right up front.
That was just like, oh, fucking hey, god damn.
Yeah. You guys are going to hear a lot of that.
Yeah.
And apologies, but that just, the movie brings it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. It is doing the exact same thing. And Shyamalan's really good with this. Like, he's really, really good with just having a scene play out and character interactions. Not necessarily characters. Sometimes characters are saying stuff. Sometimes they're saying instead of showing. But a lot of times it's what a character is saying about a thing or thinking about a thing that tells you X, Y, and Z about a character.
Well, dialogue is allowed to convey information.
Yes.
You are allowed to do, what's the word? You're allowed to do exposition through dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem is when the exposition through dialogue is stupid.
Yes.
So when it's like, Kalen, how are you doing? And I go, oh, well, you know, ever since my mother and father divorced and sold the house and then I had to go to military school, you know what I mean? And it's like, why am I reciting my life to my friend who already knows what happened to me for the last 6 months, right?
Yeah.
That's when exposition and telling, not showing, to me is dumb.
Yes.
Shyamalan conveys the information of the story in totally naturalistic dialogue that fits the scenes and what's going on.
Yes.
To a degree that when you haven't seen the movie before, you don't know you're getting tons of information right away.
That's what I'm saying.
It takes you time to even figure out, oh, he's giving me a shitload to work with right now, and I didn't even consider that.
That is exactly like when you're describing that scene back to me right now. It's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's giving us so much.
All of that stuff. And I was just watching the movie going, all right, yeah, I remember this. She's like, and she sees him. I was like, Yeah, there he is. He's wiping the stuff. Yeah, because he's weird.
Yeah, this is weird.
Speaking of him, let's just fucking get it out of the way, because there's this movie. When I think about this movie, like, I think about really two things. One of them we'll discuss shortly. The other is James McAvoy.
James McAvoy.
Giving not just like one Oscar-worthy performance, but like 5.
Yeah.
Like how is this not talked about more? Just this performance.
It's truly special. So if you're listening and you haven't watched the movie, go watch the movie, by the way.
Yeah.
The character, Kevin Wendell Crumb, that's his name, right?
Yes.
Kevin Wendell Crumb. The character has dissociative identity disorder, which we used to call multiple personality disorder. And so in the movie, he's playing like 8 characters or something like that.
So
when you add them all up.
So we, out of 23 personalities, not including the Beast is the 24th. Out of those 23, we see 9.
9. Okay. So he really plays 10 characters in this movie.
Yeah.
And if that sounds hard or impressive, it is. But it goes further than that. There is a scene where he is playing a character named...
Which one?
What the one with OCD. Is that Kevin?
That's Dennis.
I'm sorry, Dennis. Kevin is the first one, the original person.
Is the person.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, Dennis is the name I was looking for.
Yeah.
There's a character named Dennis who is a tough, stern, militaristic, OCD person. And then there's another character named Barry who is a friendly, soft, flamboyant fashion designer.
Mm-hmm.
And these characters could not be more different. There is a sequence where he is playing Dennis, pretending to be Barry.
Yeah.
And also signaling to the audience through very, very subtle, just eye movement, that he is in fact Dennis doing his best to impersonate Barry. It's like 3 layers deep of acting.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, folks. Let me tell you something. If you've never tried to act before, to call that hard is like saying, pole vaulting over a house is hard. It's fucking impossible. It is so hard to act like that. You're laughing because I'm right. You know what I mean?
I also just love your pole vaulting over a house.
Well, it's like
I got like a 12-year-old listening to this. He's like, what the fuck is pole vaulting?
Okay. What I'm trying to say is, imagine something where someone tells you to do it and you're just like, how? Imagine if I told you to just pick up a car and flip it over. And you'd be like, how the hell am I supposed to do that? That is what Shyamalan asked McAvoy to do in this film. And McAvoy just does it.
Yeah.
And to call it brilliant is an understatement. It's incredible. You see very few performances with that much layering. It is very difficult to be doing so much at once. It's imagine just someone telling you, okay, with your eyes, I just need you to convey this. That alone is hard.
Yes.
Now do that while doing 4 other things. It's a crazy ask, and he pulls it off. I've seen people criticize this movie by saying things like, oh, acting like a little kid, and then acting like a woman, and then acting a little bit flamboyant, and acting a little bit stern. That's not too hard. But when you're doing it with the depth that he is...
Yes.
And the precision, it's extremely fucking hard. And he's incredible in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I'm like I said before, I'm like, I don't understand how... I remember when it came out, yeah, it was all the hubbub, but, this is not talked about in the same breath as, Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood, or...
I mean, you know why. It's because it's horror and nobody respects horror.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. If we have Sir Anthony Hopkins,
Oh, that's true.
Which I would say is Silence of the Lambs is more horrific than, even though there is some truly horrifying stuff in this. This is elevated, superhero-esque horror that we're dealing with,
Yeah.
But it really is astounding to me because, there are scenes where, it is merely a movement of a camera from right to left, and he has changed posture, personality, and tone within a split of a second.
Boom. Even facial expressions.
Yeah.
You could tell the difference between Barry and, I'm sorry, what was the Stern one was?
Dennis.
Barry and Dennis had different, the way that their eyes looked. Dennis had more of a squint to his eye, more of a harsh look on his face. And you could literally tell just by how relaxed his face was or wasn't, which one he was trying to convey. It was really wild, impressive stuff.
Super duper impressive.
Yeah.
Not to mention the physical nature, he's very, very fit, and you're thinking, all right, cool, so not only are you doing all this acting, but you're, working out like a motherfucker on top of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the physical prep for this must have been pretty intense.
Getting his dance moves in when he's playing headwig.
That's right. My main man.
Yeah, there's, I just can't imagine the research and the dedication.
The prep for this role must have been crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. I think of, there are all those, legendary stories of Heath Ledger locking himself in a hotel room for a month to try and figure out the Joker's voice in his laugh. And I'm like, as not to go off on too much of a tangent, I'm sure one day we'll get there, but the Joker sounds nothing like Heath Ledger.
No.
Nothing.
Nope.
Even a little bit.
He sure doesn't. He doesn't act much like him either.
And it's one of those things you're like, how? What went off in that person's brain to make them be able to do that? How did they change their body? It's so, it's, staggering to me that people, can go to these lengths just, for their art. It really is something special,
Yeah. Definitely agree.
I'm sure we'll keep talking about him as we go along, but any more on James McAvoy before we move on to our next good thing?
No, just, what I had here was James McAvoy, all of it. And then I put Dennis playing Barry specifically.
Yeah.
That was something that I wanted to bring up. Yeah. But just excellent stuff.
Yeah, agreed. Could not agree more. What else you got for me? What's another goodie good?
So this movie is extremely Hitchcockian in the way that it is shot and in the style of storytelling, the way that it builds tension. Right from jump, when we get into the car and Dennis is in the car with the girls, the shot is her perspective looking at him, and then his perspective looking at her. Yeah. Very Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes.
And with plenty of breathing room for the audience to be afraid.
Yes.
And the whole movie does that. You get so many. So when I say Hitchcockian, I am talking about an overall vibe, but I don't mean that in a super sort of whimsical way. I do mean that in a very specific kind of way. If you've watched the films of Alfred Hitchcock, and if you haven't, go ahead and check out just a few of his more prominent classics, and you'll totally get the idea of what I'm talking about here. But very point of view driven. The camera is normally at the eye level of the characters, so you're normally seeing things from the perspective of those characters. There's a scene where one of the girls is hiding in a locker, and the camera's inside the locker. Things like that. But also the way that from those perspectives, everything just moves slowly and allows tension to continue to just build. And this movie just builds tension, and it has that sort of suspenseful Hitchcockian vibe. And when that is done well, I absolutely love that. And I think this movie does it about as well as any in recent memory.
Honestly, like when you say Hitchcockian, and I think about it in those terms, like there is a lot of stuff, like particularly like when you're talking about like some of his more prominent stuff, like you can put this with Psycho, and you can see how those, and I mean, hey,
how it informs,
not to like jump the gun or anything, but the guy with
that's true
DID and
that's
another guy with DID, like that made for a hell of a pairing right there. But you know who I really think about that, I feel like, because this person is again probably the biggest Hitchcock fan out there as far as style is concerned, and I feel like it's a hat on a hat sort of situation. I see more De Palma in Shyamalan's style, because De Palma is taking from
100%
Hitchcock, and you just kind of see, because De Palma is the same way, like the way he lingers on stuff, the tension building and the slowness of the camera movement. I mean, you're 100% right. There's like nothing in Split where like there's not a lot of like quick cuts or anything like that. It is all
not
very
jerking around.
It's
all very slow and methodical.
Yeah, exactly. Even that wonderful, God, I was just like just thought it was the coolest fucking shot again when I watched it today. When he's on the ceiling and he's knocking the lights out. I was like, that's so fucking scary.
So good, dude. Oh boy.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a patience to the suspense building that like particularly most films in this day and age, they just cannot. They can't hold that tension for long. They've got to do a jump scare. They got to do something, because God forbid, the audience be engaged. See what's going to happen next.
God forbid the audience be focused on the movie. Yeah. But that's, you bring up a great point there though, because it takes real skill to do that well. Because if your film's not engaging, you just lose the audience and you're just making a boring movie. Whereas someone like Shyamalan can take their time. Someone, we go all the way back to Hitchcock. Someone like Hitchcock, someone like Brian De Palma, somebody like Shyamalan, and many others in this sort of tradition can do that because the movie is so compelling. That you're willing to let it breathe. You're going with it wherever it's going, and that tension is building inside of you. It's almost like when you read a novel's telling a story in you. It's almost having that sort of an effect where it's psychologically manipulating you. I love that.
As a writer, I expect you would. So
yeah, I certainly do.
That's good. I dig that. Good pull, man. I like that a lot. Anya Taylor-Joy. Just
Taylor-Joy.
Her and James McAvoy together, just what a pairing they make. There are so many scenes where they're both just like at these emotional highs in the natural way that like tears just come streaming down her face at any given moment. I'm just like in awe of her natural ability to be in the moment and feel that like raw emotion. She did it in The Witch, like even at that young age. I mean, she's only a couple of years older at this stage in the game.
And she'd only be roughly like a year older.
I mean, just so well executed for a fairly nuanced and low-key performance, I would say. She is the one, if we're going to make a horror comp. She is the Laurie Strode to like Claire and Marcia being like Annie and whatever the other one's name is in Halloween. I can't think of it right now.
That's okay.
But yeah, she's the one who keeps a cool head. She's the one who's paying attention to things. She's the one who's like, we can't just overpower this guy. Like
that's a really good bit of dialogue, that whole little bit right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Says a lot. Says a lot. Again, this is one of those things that even now I'm just thinking about, oh wow, this is a girl that has tried to overpower someone.
Mm-hmm. She said, he'll hurt us.
Uh-huh.
She knows.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot to say about that specific thing, but we'll save that for a couple of sections down the road here. I'll keep the train going over here. All the little Easter eggs I was able to pick up, like that was the one thing I really was kind of intently focused on this time around. Was like, all right, cool. What did Shyamalan sneak in here? Because he knew.
Right.
So there had to be like some little stuff. And speaking of Anya Taylor-Joy's character, Casey Cook, CC, David Dunn. So think of that superhero, Bruce Banner, Peter Parker. It's not the same letters, but Clark Kent, that sort of a deal. That was something I picked up on this time. There is a great bit of dialogue where Dr. Fletcher is talking to one of her peers about dissociative identity disorder, and she's talking about how it could essentially be the next stage in human evolution. Not to pull from Charles Xavier or anything. Hey, James McAvoy. There's a little speech about that just is like had a noun or two been changed. You're like, oh yeah, Elijah Price is delivering this speech, talking about the abilities and potential capabilities of the human body and brain and whatnot. And the other big thing is, and this is actually a really big thing when you think about it in retrospect, when I believe it's Hedwig is describing what the beast looks like. Oh no, it's Dennis. Dennis is telling Dr. Fletcher what the beast looks like and how he has he's much taller than Dennis,
much bigger than me.
Bigger, and he has a long mane of hair and his fingers are twice as long as ours. He is describing the comic book character that we see on the comic that Elijah's mother gives to him.
Oh my goodness. He totally is. Yeah. God, what do they call that? They had a name for it and everything.
It was like
Advent Comics or something. It was a play on Action Comics.
Yeah.
He totally is.
Yeah.
That's insane. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously there's another thing I read that I didn't pick up on because I'm like so engaged in the scene, but when we're at the last scene and we're panning around the diner, there's like a coat rack, and on the coat rack you can see the green poncho, which I think is pretty cool. But Kevin goes, or Dennis rather, has the light at the moment when he's at the train station, and he lays down flowers at the train station. Now, this is something that we don't get until the next film, but we will eventually find out that Kevin lost his father in the train accident that David Dunn survived. So I do believe that's why he's putting flowers down there. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what's happening.
Yeah, that makes sense
there.
to me.
But yeah, there's a lot of little fun Easter eggs there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's stuff that might have missed too. Obviously, there's a lot of Philadelphia stuff going on because this is also taking place in Philadelphia. I think that the train station that he is walking around in before he gets to like the actual like subway area, it looks to be the same one that David is walking around in the first film. So other good stuff.
Other good stuff. There's a few more. So one thing that I really liked here was that Casey is this very intelligent, tactical person. She's not your standard victim.
Yeah.
And I think we have kind of a roundabout way of getting to how she is like that, and it's not just the really bad thing, but it's also, we see flashbacks of her with her father,
Yeah.
who seemed to be at least a woodsman and very experienced hunter.
Yeah.
And he seemed to be teaching her very practical skills.
Yes.
With regards to sort of just how to live and behave. Like, you know, he talks about how he mentions that the female bucks are smarter than the male bucks, and he says, but you know that it's just like humans. I thought that was a cute line. And you know, she knows when her uncle has buck fever, right? Like, how big was the rack? This big. Well, why are you looking at the rack? And she's like, because he has buck fever. She seems to be learning very practical advice about hunting and surviving. Like, he mentions, you know, getting her gloves on before she gets outside.
Yeah.
And you sort of just get the sense that from this father who was that kind of guy, that she sort of learned to be logistically intelligent. You know what I mean? Like, she seemed to learn to think in a strategic way. And I think that's a cool way to achieve that, because I doubt that M. Night Shyamalan grew up with redneck parents teaching him to hunt. Yeah. You know what I mean? I feel like he's really stepping outside of his own life there. But giving us a good explanation, because a lot of times in movies, even in movies that are pretty grounded, and despite this movie being a horror thriller that involves superpowers and shit, this is a pretty grounded movie. Yeah, absolutely. You oftentimes don't have very grounded explanations for why heroic characters are capable of the things they're capable of. Yes. And I like that we got a very grounded explanation for that. I like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
That is shit that just people just don't think about. And we talk about this on Unbreakable, just like the little things, that all the little tiny details that like you just don't get from like your average movie writer, filmmaker, that you just don't get those character beats and stuff like that tell you why a person is the way they are. You know. And I think part of that is so audience members can project themselves onto characters, you know. Yeah. So for better or worse, but yeah. What else?
So the last one I have written down here, and this is a simple one, but it's not often in movies that you see girls, whether they be high school age girls or young women, or even, you know, older women, you don't often see women that are like pretty and skinny and well off, and you have a point of view character who's more of an outcast, and those characters aren't awful people. Yeah. They usually are in movies and in fiction. It's usually, these are the bad people who are mean to us. Yeah. And we are the victim. And I think that kind of stereotyping and storytelling can really go too far. Yes. Like, I think people can get to the point where it can get a little bit gross. Yeah. Where it's like all of those hot girls whose parents love them are just terrible bimbos, and you know what I mean? And I think that stereotype gets a little old. Yes. And I kind of like that the other two girls here are not awful. Like, they invited Casey to the party because they didn't want her to feel left out. Yes. They're making an effort despite the fact that she's kind of an asshole. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they're making an effort with her. even in the room when they're panicking and the one girl wants to jump Dennis, and Casey is intelligently reminding her that 3 16-year-old girls will not take a big, strong, mean man. That's not going to happen. Even then, she's going, why do you do this? Why do you act like you're not one of us?
Yeah.
And then even later in the movie, when the girls are trying to get out of their secluded cells, she's saying, like, we're going to get out of here and we're going to get Casey and, you know, we're going to get out of here. And I'm like, they're not bitches.
Yeah.
And I like that because you know what? Sometimes girls are bitches, and in movies they don't do a great job of portraying that sometimes.
I agree 100%. That specifically that line of like we're gonna get out and we're gonna get
Casey. Yeah, we're not gonna leave her here.
That to me, I was like, God, these are like that's good storytelling in multiple ways. It's good storytelling because most people, like, for all the dumb shit that we do, like, and as much as we are about self-preservation, like, if you have day-to-day interactions with someone and it's not somebody that you outright hate because they're a terrible individual, then, like, there's empathy there. Like, you don't want to see so-and-so die or be in pain.
Right.
Like, that is a normal thing because we spend time with these people. We you know, and if you're a half-decent human being, like, you don't want terrible things to happen to other half-decent human beings. Mm-hmm. There was another movie that I saw recently that also kind of upended that trope very well, which was Lisa Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. Very fun movie. Really enjoyed it. There is a stepsister who is arguably, like, steals the show, like, because she's such a sweetheart, like, gives full support to our lead character who can be fairly antagonistic from time to time, and the stepsister, just the name stepsister, because of, like, Cinderella and shit like that, you just think that they are going to be the worst, and the stepsister is the beautiful, like, one with all the friends that, and everyone loves her, and she's so nice to Lisa through the entire film that you're just like, this is so great that it breaks this trope, because you're absolutely right. It's just like, it just gets old. Yeah. Like, we've seen it done 100 times. Like,
we've seen it done 100 million times.
Yeah, and I mean, like, dude, like, I went to high school. Like, we all went to high school. Not a lot of times the pretty girls that are the most popular are the most popular for a reason. Because they're nice.
Right.
Because they've had good parents that teach them to be kind to other people. Shit like that. You don't just get popular for being pretty all the time. Like,
sometimes you do, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people aren't going to want to hang out with you if you are just a twat, you know?
No.
So, you're absolutely right. That was another thing that I was just like, yeah, that's great right there. That's upending a very old, tired trope.
You know, so I wondered where that came from, that he wrote that so diametrically opposed to the standard. And then I only realized, like, this week, Shyamalan's, not this week, I had found out earlier, but Shyamalan has 2 adult daughters. I didn't know he had 2 adult daughters. He's got 2 adult daughters, and if you've seen them, they are stunning young women. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he raised 2 beautiful girls who were rich kids, and they probably weren't horrible people, you know what I mean? And so he's got this different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully, you know, most fathers, you know, that have done a good job raising their daughters would feel that, you know, hey, the pretty ones aren't
They're not automatically evil, folks.
Yes, exactly.
People, believe it or not, you shouldn't judge people based solely on the way that they look. That's actually not a great idea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What's that expression?
Wild concept.
Something about a book? Oh, it's fun.
Only buy a book with a good cover.
That's what it is. There it is. Support your local Barnes & Noble.
That's right.
All right, I just got like one more thing here before we have our big discussion about the thing.
Yeah.
That's just the pace of this movie. I told you, like, I just see this movie as a straight line. It is a 2-hour picture, but it just goes. It just goes, like you said, within 4 minutes of this movie rolling, we have our inciting incident.
Yeah.
Like we're off to the races.
Yep.
5 minutes in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we sure are.
And it's just engaging. Even though like action doesn't really happen until the last 25% of the movie, I would say. This is a character-driven film, driven by many characters.
Yep.
And it's you're fully engaged. Just by the urgency of the story, we know fairly early on that there is a timeline that the beast is coming. These girls don't have a lot of time.
Right.
And that window just gets smaller and smaller. So, I like, again, like, just like I said before, I just think of this movie as just like a straight line. We just, like, the minute, there's no real zigs and zags, we're just going, you know? And,
I think movies should do that more often than not.
I agree.
Like, I think that's usually the best call. Sometimes you gotta zig and zag and do crazy stuff, but as a rule of thumb.
Yeah, man.
Yep. Tell your story.
Get to where you're going.
Yep.
And where we are going is, and I just have it here in my notes as that scene. So we have our finale.
Nope.
Casey gets saved.
Nope.
And we cut back to Kevin Windlecrumb, and it's the Horde having a discussion between some cracked mirrors, imagine that. Some broken glass.
Yep.
And I remember, I will tell you, because again, as I stated on our last episode, like, I had seen Unbreakable probably, I would argue that I'd probably seen it 2, maybe 3 times in my life up to the point when I had seen Split.
Okay.
So it was not like 100% in my brain. But that conversation between Hedwig, Dennis, and Patricia is happening in those mirrors, and I'm just like dialed in, tuned in. I don't even notice the piano when it starts.
Yep.
I don't even notice it. And then something in my lizard brain starts to register this music. It's really good, and I like it, and it's familiar. What is it? And then the beat kicks in, and I'm like, I know this music. I know, what is this from? He pulled something. I was like, he pulled this music from something. I don't know what it is, but I know I've heard it before. This is not the music to this movie. I know it isn't.
Yeah.
And then Split, and I'm like, all right, cool, that was great. And then immediately cuts to the dining room, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then they're talking, and they blah, 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 and the Horde, and oh yeah, isn't it kind of like that? This is kind of like that guy who was in the wheelchair, and I was like, oh my god! It was like that line. Like, it was something about, like, giving the name to da-da-da-da. This is kind of like that. Just, like, my brain in those seconds was putting it all together. And then, like, the wheelchair. And then she just moves her head just a hair. And you see Bruce Willis sitting there. And I was just, like, grabbing Celeste's hand. I was like, you don't understand!
Oh, my God.
Yes.
So,
So, what did you feel? Like, what went through your brain when you heard the music and you knew? Like, what were you just like, there's no fucking way? Are you fucking kidding me?
No, So, I honestly had started to suspect earlier because it was located in Philadelphia, and they literally used the word superpowers in the movie.
Yeah.
And I had begun to suspect a connection earlier. When she goes to stab the beast...
And it breaks.
Because he's unbreakable. I kind of was like, we're fucking doing Unbreakable. You know what I mean? Like, we're doing some fucking Unbreakable. And I wasn't sure. But, like, it sure felt like it. And then, she shoots him and he bends the bars. And he's clearly super... At that point, it's like, this is not a regular human being.
Yeah.
He got blasted with a shotgun and he just bent steel bars. But the second the beat dropped... So, before the beat dropped, I was like... Is that Unbreakable? And then the moment the beat dropped, I knew what it was. Yeah. I knew what it was. I didn't know what it was going to be, right? I didn't know that we were going to get Bruce Willis. Maybe we were going to get Samuel L. Jackson. Maybe we were going to get Robin Wright. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I knew... Maybe we were just going to get the news reporter talking about those characters, right? I didn't know what it was going to be. But as soon as that beat dropped, I was like, this is fucking Unbreakable. And I had just goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It was such a great moment for me. And as soon as that beat dropped, I started hitting my friend who I was there at the movie with. Shout out to my homegirl, Karina. I started hitting my friend, like, it's Unbreakable. It's fucking Unbreakable. And she was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
and then it cuts to David Dunn, and he says, Mr. Glass. And I was exploding out of my seat. And I was like, you guys, it's fucking Unbreakable.
Nobody else in the theater knew.
Nobody knew. The one girl was very displeased with me. Like, okay. I'm like, hey, you know what? This is important, okay? Yeah. You know what I mean? Get on board or get off board. I don't care.
That's what I'm saying.
Just, I didn't care at all. And I felt bad because I feel like I did embarrass my homegirl. But I just couldn't care. I was too excited. I was too happy. Yeah, man. Genuinely one of the most special moments in a movie theater for me ever, because you're talking about a movie that had come out 16 years prior, a movie that I think at that point had already gotten its cult classic status. I think people like us existed who really sort of perceived that movie as a true classic.
Yes.
But it was 16 years later, and Shyamalan's career had gone off the rails, and it also kind of felt like a movie that would be difficult to come up with a follow-up to.
Yeah.
So I didn't ever expect to get a sequel to Unbreakable. Yeah. I had read that Shyamalan had thought about doing a trilogy, and I wanted it to happen, but I also, no offense to M. Night, obviously I'm a huge fan, but I wasn't sure if he had the creative juice to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he did have 3... really bad movies, one after the other, and that's not a good sign. And people do pass their creative primes sometimes and never get it back. That happens. And sometimes they get it back, right? Sometimes they do a couple bad things and then they find their groove again.
Yeah.
But I had no reason to believe M. Night Shyamalan was going to ever get all the way back into his groove, and I did not expect there to ever be a sequel to Unbreakable, and suddenly I had this stealth sequel to my favorite movie ever made, and it obviously helped that I had really loved the movie that had come before.
Yes.
Like, the movie that had led to that twist. By the way, this is a sequel to Unbreakable. This is a stealth sequel, a stealth spinoff. Was already something that I was like, well, this is a great movie. This is a movie that's going to stay with me. So yeah, dude, incredible fucking moment in the movie theater. One of my favorite moments in a movie theater in my life. That twist. That is something that's going to be very hard to replicate. And we don't have things like that in this day and age. We don't get surprised like that.
No.
We know everything that's coming, everything leaks. Like, even if you don't kind of want to know, if you're in the movie space, you find out. So, really special thing.
Yeah. I just rewatched the Deadpool trailer, which looks like a fucking blast. And,
you mean Deadpool and Wolverine, right?
Yeah, and I could not help but think, that moment at the end of the trailer was meant to be a surprise. Like, I'm sure that would have hit a bazillion times harder Had we not seen production photos and knew that Hugh Jackman was going to be in that movie,
100%, and
that
we didn't have the title either. It was just
Yeah.
Deadpool 3 to us, and
Yeah.
so if we had gotten that as the dude, it would have been pandemonium.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I think about stuff like that. I think about. Did you ever watch the? Talking about like how like even just a trailer, you know, being spoiled is
Right.
silly. But did you ever see the Pet Sematary remake?
Yeah.
Or know of it?
Yeah, I did.
How much better would that movie have hit had you gone into it not knowing
That they switched up the
situation?
two. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, totally agree.
I thought the same thing. I was like, dude, because the way that scene plays out in that movie, you think Gage is still gonna die.
Yeah, you do. Hell yeah, you do. Especially if someone like us who is a fan of the original movie, who's read the novel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my favorite Stephen King book. So
Yeah.
like I was like,
I read your copy. Remember?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Great fucking. I don't know if I could ever read it again.
But it's a great novel though.
So great.
Yeah.
Hard to swallow when you have a little boy, you know. So
I wouldn't. I don't think I'll ever read it again. But yeah, good book.
Yeah, thought about like, oh man, I'm sure those filmmakers are so fucking disappointed that
Oh yeah.
their thing was spoiled.
Their big twist that was gonna change.
Dude, I would have lost my mind.
I know.
I would have lost my fucking mind.
God, what a dark
So
movie.
yeah, all that said, like, how the fuck did this not get spoiled for us? Like,
Dude.
just one of the that's what I'm saying is that is part of the reason why that memory will stick with me for probably the rest of my life, because I can't remember like my favorite movie. Like, I saw the making of Jaws before I saw Jaws. Jaws was spoiled for me, but like I'm so used to everything being spoiled for me all the time.
Yep.
So to have like a legitimate surprise like that was unprecedented, you know? It was, like I said, like that's like, and you and I had talked for years about it, and I was just like, Kalen, go, please go right now, buddy. You have to. I remember walking out of that theater and having my phone in my hands, just feeling
Go to the movie. Yeah.
How fast did you end up getting to that theater? Did you
The following day, I believe.
Damn.
Yep.
Damn. Attaboy.
Yep.
That's the stuff.
Yeah. If it was me now, I would have gone the same day. But in my youth, I was insecure about seeing movies by myself, so...
Dude, can I tell you something? We just, wrap up the good stuff with this. I love going to the movies by myself. It is so much fun.
Yeah.
The last movie I went and saw by myself, I did a couple this summer because there's a lot of movies that came out this summer. And we couldn't always find a babysitter. You know what? I was just like fucking selfish because there were a couple movies I was like, I don't think Celeste is going to really care one way or another. I went and saw the Meg 2 by myself. Had a fucking blast. Went and saw Mission Impossible by myself. Had a fucking blast. One of the best theater experiences I ever had was I went and saw a dumb shark movie. It was 47 Meters Down, Uncaged. And like I went to Yard House before. It was like an early bird movie. I went into Yard House as soon as they opened, had myself like 2 martinis. Went to watch this dumb fucking shark movie.
Breakfast martinis and shark bullshit movies.
Oh man, one of the best fucking experiences ever. What a dumbass movie. But yeah, guys, go see movies by yourself. It's fun.
Go
It's
see
a good
movies.
time. Well, on that note, we are going to hop on over to our next category, the shit. So, here at the shit, we talk about stuff we didn't like about the movie. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Alrighty. Well, Well, there's parts of the movie I didn't like that don't make it a bad movie, but we haven't gotten into that. I don't know if you want to save that for later.
We have a certain section for that.
We'll worry about that then.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about my only real criticism of the film. And this is not a very major... So, I like this movie a lot.
Yes.
I don't have a lot of big criticisms. One thing that I have as a minor criticism is the way that I interpret the film and this universe is that some people are the way that Bruce Willis is. Some people are unbreakable.
Yeah.
And in my headcanon, I just call them unbreakables.
Yeah.
And Kevin Wendell Crumb is one of them.
Yeah.
But his dissociative identity disorder split that aspect of himself into a different personality.
Yeah.
So he didn't grow up as one of them. But it would have been in him from birth. And that's the way that I perceive it. Within the context of the movie. That's my sort of headcanon. I think that Shyamalan is not careful enough in that he frames DID like it might be some kind of way of accessing superpowers.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think, even in story, I don't think that's actually true. I don't think that's really quite what's happening. Yeah. I think that he is claiming the physiological changes are possible. But we know that David Dunn has superpowers, and he is not DID.
Yeah.
So DID doesn't create these unbreakable people.
Yeah.
But he kind of frames it like that's the Doctor's big theory.
Yeah.
And I don't love that for one very simple reason. DID is theoretically real.
Yes.
There are theoretically people in the audience watching this movie who are suffering from DID.
Yes.
And that's not really funny.
Yeah.
And you know, not to be overly sensitive about it, I don't think they're all sitting there crying and being victims over this movie or anything. But I just think when you're dealing with things that are real, you should treat them with a little bit of respect in that sense. And I'm not saying he didn't, and I don't know a ton about DID. For those of you who don't know, DID is a really interesting thing because not everyone even agrees that it's real.
Yeah.
And I don't mean everyone like people like me and Johnny. I mean like people in the psychology community.
Yeah.
They don't all agree that it's real. Some of them think that it's delusion and that it's just people making it up and etc.
Yeah. Hey, etc.
and etc.
etc.
Some people think that it's just people making it up. Other people think that it's totally real. Other people think that it's real but more rare than the diagnosis would tell you. So we're talking about something that's theoretically a real thing that people suffer from, and in that sense, I think that you should be careful to sort of represent it in an honest way. Now, that said, I'm not a psychologist, nor am I an expert in DID, and it did seem like at times he was trying to present it fairly because there is seemingly the phenomena of the different personalities taking control of the person at a time, and the rest of them are internal while that's happening.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not saying he treated it with no respect, but I would have liked to have seen him be just a little bit more careful when talking about like a real affliction that people actually deal with.
I get that. I absolutely get that.
Yeah.
I also don't have too many criticisms. One criticism that I have here is less to do with the film itself and more to do with the universe it resides in as a whole. Mm-hmm. Like, can't help but feel that, like, when I watch this movie now, it feels like a bridge movie because I'm like, we have this movie that with this one character that, like, you know, does its whole thing, and I'm like, get me back to Mr. Glass and David Dunn. Like, that's kind of like where my head is at, even though, you know, no spoilers, this film is probably a more well-crafted, well-told story than that third film. That being said, I'm always really eager to get back to those characters because I love Unbreakable so much. So that's not so much something against this movie, except that it does go back to the same thing that it keeps saying, that this movie is just like, we're doing this one thing with this guy who's gonna do this shit to these girls, and that's what the story is. So let's go get there and get it over with, basically. So in that sense, it does just feel like such like a point A to point B sort of bridge gap. And as I said before, this is not wholly a negative thing, but this film does feel like so much more of a showcase for a great actor rather than a consistently compelling narrative. You know, I'm interested to see these characters and to see what happens, but like at the end of the day, like Split is like a showcase for what a great actor James McAvoy is. Like that's what I think of when I think of Split. I think of that. Like, oh yeah, James McAvoy showing off what a fucking dope actor he is, and we're gonna sit and watch that for 2 hours, you know? And that's not absolutely what the movie is, but like that is kind of like my perception of it. Like when I think about it, I'm like,
see, I don't think of it that way, because I think that I think that McAvoy's incredible performance very much serves the narrative and tells the story. Whereas I think that usually when I think of a showcase, I think of there being less purpose within the context of the story for the brilliant demonstration of talent. Whereas in this one, I felt like we had a very tight and specific narrative, and that all of that showing off was in service of that narrative.
And you're right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're not right. I know this. This is like, it's almost like when I sit and see it on the shelf sort of a deal. That's like kind of what my brain just thinks of like when I think of the movie. Because when I'm watching it, I'm like, this is a very interesting movie. There's a lot of different wonderful things that I forget happen in this movie that are going on. Great character beats, great storative, like great storytelling, and yeah, it's just like one of those things where you kind of like, I don't know, when you're looking at something from afar, almost like the way your brain thinks about something is different than when you're in it. So again, those are like the nittiest picks.
Yeah.
Because like when I think about the movie, like I'm trying to think of like stuff that I don't like or I don't feel, I feel don't work, and I am coming up empty, so I'm making shit up basically.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's it for the shit. So,
yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot here. So, any other random thoughts that you want to throw in there? Anything that doesn't necessarily fit in the good or the bad, or
something I just wanted to say that I don't think I got the chance to say earlier was I've noticed a little bit of pushback recently on Anya Taylor-Joy, which is what happens when anyone gets like
famous
to the point that they're like the it girl.
Yeah,
you'll get a little bit of like, oh, she's not even that good of an actor. I think that this movie like is such a strong and subtle performance from such a precocious young actor at the time.
Yeah.
I think it really demonstrates the kind of skill and talent as a performer that she has.
Kind of really does blow my mind that like people didn't really even know about her until that Netflix thing came up.
Yeah, dude.
That's like what made her blow up.
Yeah, so I saw that on like Instagram or something. She was like, I went into lockdown, I wasn't famous. She was like I walked around the street and I didn't get noticed and no one knew who I was. And then when we came out of the lockdowns, I was really famous, and that was like kind of a shock for her. I'm like, how are you not famous? You were, you were doing movies with M. Night Shyamalan and Robert Eggers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, Robert Eggers at the time is not Robert Eggers of now.
No, that's true.
And like, while people like you and I like saw The Witch and were like, yes, this is the future of horror.
Yeah.
Average people are not going to go see that movie. So them not knowing that, this was one where I was like, this is a much more accessible movie.
Yeah.
To the masses.
For sure.
How...
Yeah.
Like, and I think it did fairly well. I don't think it was, like, breaking records or anything. No, actually, I read that it did over $100 million. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's a lot of ticket sales.
People went to see it.
Yeah. So, that right there. But, yeah, dude, whatever it was, what was the chess, someone's game?
Queen's Gambit?
Yeah, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Queen's Gambit, yeah, man. People being locked in their homes.
Locked in their houses
and that blew up across the internet.
Shows. Yeah.
That'll do it, pal.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're going to head on out of the shit and go on over to our next section, Truly Terrifying Tidbits. So here in Truly Terrifying Tidbits, we are going to talk about some of the more scarier aspects of the film. Not unlike Unbreakable, Split is not a cut and dry horror movie like we typically discuss on this film. That being said, it is more a horror movie than Unbreakable, mm-hmm. and certainly more of a horror movie than the threequel, Glass, which does just dive into full-blown superhero territory by the end. Mm-hmm. So, out of the three movies, this is the most horror-centric, for sure. You agree with that?
I think of this one as a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, I think of Unbreakable as horror adjacent.
Yes, very much so.
And Glass as not a horror movie.
Yeah.
And I think of Split as a horror movie.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's obviously, it's a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
But I think of this one as a horror film.
I mean, we're gonna, touch on this in a minute, but, like, we do see a girl with her innards hanging out at one point.
Yes, we sure do.
Since we're already in the thick of it, we're going to talk about finding the horror in Split. The inciting incident is horrific. Girls are kidnapped by a man, you know? That right there. We've been beating around the bush for this entire podcast, so we can just go ahead and talk about it, because this is something that I had forgotten was a part of this story. Mm-hmm. And the flashbacks, I could not remember immediately when I first saw it, and it was the dad and the uncle. I kind of thought it was a quote-unquote uncle, kind of like, oh, this is my, my buddy
friend.
Sort of thing.
The way Killian calls me Uncle Kalen.
Yeah, I thought it was like that, and I knew that something nefarious was going on, and I couldn't remember if, like, the men were in, like, a relationship and she saw something, because, like, there was just... I just knew from the flashback that something was not right. Mm-hmm. And I... my brain did not go straight to pedophilia.
So that would have been a lot different than what we got.
Yeah. So, but it was, there was, like, the following scene where, like, he said just some weird thing. It wasn't even the part where, like, he was saying that we're going to be animals or whatever. It wasn't even that one yet. It was something before that. I was like, oh, no. Is that what happens here? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That shit's rough, man.
It's
really
pretty fucking rough. It's pretty rough, and it definitely makes the movie a harsher watch. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know, bro. It's so... We find out that Casey as a child was being abused by her uncle.
Was still being abused by her uncle.
Right. We find out it began in her early childhood. Her father dies of a random heart attack, and then she becomes her uncle's ward, and he abuses her. And so she's just living with this fucking pervert who is harming her. And that is our explanation as to why Casey acts out in class. why she tries to get detention so that she doesn't have to go home, why she tries to run away, why she covers up her arms and stuff. Why in the beginning of the movie, when they're all leaving the party, she's claiming that her ride just isn't showing up, so they better leave without her. She doesn't want to go home.
Yeah.
So, that touches on real life stuff there that is super fucked up and uncomfortable. And I think it's portrayed with just enough realism in the movie that it makes you more kind of uncomfortable.
Well, the scene that really, it just really, I don't know really how to describe it, just, made me cringe and squirm is the scene where he's like, let's be animals. You can't wear your clothes.
Right, animals don't wear clothes.
Yeah. And because it's, you see somebody trying to manipulate a child at their level, mm-hmm. and you know that that's probably how it goes down a lot of the time, to try and make a child feel safe, like they're playing a game or something like that.
Yeah.
And that sort of realistic aspect is really hard to watch.
It's pretty rough. It's pretty fucking rough, yeah. It can be pretty triggering, that part of the movie, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do find out, ultimately, that she is all scarred up from whatever horrible things that he has done to her because she goes into his care when she is, fucking 5 years old.
Yeah, she's a little kid.
Mm-hmm. And so there's at least 10 years of just consistent abuse going on.
Yeah.
And so by the end of the picture, when her clothes are shredded, and the whole idea of the beast feasting upon impure people, it's people who have not suffered, basically. People who have gone...
People without severe trauma.
Yeah, people who have gone untested, who have just kind of skated through life. They're not worthy of existence is essentially the beast's code. And I don't know if there's a message in there or what, but the beast spares her because she has indeed suffered and been through trauma.
And is therefore, in his philosophy, pure.
Yeah. She's
pure and worthy of living because she's suffered.
Because her suffering elevates her above the rest.
Mm-hmm.
That is, for me, in a movie, where girls are, having, being eaten alive and kidnapped and shit like that.
People are being kind of brutally murdered.
And, a woman gets her, rib cage cracked
mm-hmm.
to the point that it kills her, and, harming children is just kind of the fucking worst thing, Yeah.
And I think that there's something to it, too, where, the way that he squeezes the lady to death, and even the way he kills those young girls, and by the way, it's not like those scenes, it's not like that shit's not harsh. This is a pretty tough movie. Those two young girls are sweet girls.
Yeah.
Who don't fucking deserve what's happening to them, and they get brutally murdered by this monster. That's not that that's not rough. I think it's just the Casey stuff when she's a kid is just so real, and that stuff is so fictional. I think that's why it's more difficult.
It's also this kind of goes back to what I talked about in the last episode, where murder is something, I don't want to say we glorify, but as horror fans, we're
very desensitized.
Let's see that bitch get her head chopped off. That sort
talk
of
about
thing.
how good the kills are.
Yeah, and all that sort of stuff, because there is an element of hyper stylized,
mm-hmm.
over the top, silliness to a lot of that. And so if we see teenage girls get murdered in a movie, we're we've seen that 100 times.
We watch that all the time.
You know what we don't see a lot, and are not tested in that regard, is kids being
mm-hmm.
molested and raped and shit. And that's because most humans cannot fucking process that shit. Mm-hmm. Like, we all know, and to, you know, a lesser extent, accept that we're going to die. We don't accept that terrible things can happen to innocent children like that, you know?
Yeah.
No one makes peace with that.
Yeah.
Ever. So, that is the, you know, harder pill to swallow.
It's also a significantly lesser scene, but there's even a scene where you cut to Kevin Wendell Crumb's mom screaming at him. And if you were ever a child that was screamed at in that very specific way, that scene can get you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you just see it from his perspective, where he's hiding underneath the bed.
Mm-hmm. You hear her screaming though in the background, and
And I think we touched on this last episode, that the theory is that the woman who is being abusive or verbally abusive to her son at the football stadium is indeed Kevin and his mother, which would all check out, you know, timeline wise too. So
yeah, jeez.
Yeah, just people suck, I think, is the general takeaway from this. Yeah, I mean, this movie is not, like, I mean, it's PG-13 movie,
but it's bleak.
Yeah,
this is one of the bleaker, rougher PG-13 movies you'll watch.
Yeah. I mean,
for sure.
Particularly ones that involve superheroes.
Yeah, this is not exactly an MCU pick.
No. I'm gonna say it's like this and Daredevil 2003, but you take out the playground scene. Or is it 2002? Fuck, maybe it's 2002. That sounds about right.
It was 2003 because Spider-Man came out in 2002.
Hey. That's why we keep you here.
That's right. I'm only good for a couple of things.
But you didn't know Sterling K. Brown.
Alright, I'll try to get back into character.
Yeah, I know, right? Pretend like we didn't just do this. Alright, guys, so you know that part where I just hit my hand on the pool table there? Well, that just set off my watch because it's got this thing on there where it's like, if you fall, like, it wants to send an SOS, basically, and you have to be like, no, I didn't fall. Well, I did that, and it stopped us recording, and we didn't know we stopped recording. So we finished the podcast, and so we got to double back and redo the bit that we did not record. So if any of this seems disingenuous, we apologize.
We're sorry about that, guys.
We've already done this before, so apologies in advance. But without any further ado, go ahead and give me that rewatch.
Woo!
Yes. Talk about rewatch, am I right? So, here at the Rewatch, we just discussed the film's rewatchability value and how you can share it with other people and get other people to enjoy the film as much as you. So, with that said, Kalen, if you were going to show this or try and get someone to watch this film, what would be the YouTube clip that you would show to them to get them engaged and want to watch the film?
So I think the clip is the first scene of the girls in the room with Kevin Wendell Crumb and his various personalities, where they seem to start off with Dennis, and we eventually see Patricia come out. Because I think that's a good scene for sort of giving somebody the pitch of the film.
Yeah, so you get a little bit of the dynamic of the personalities of inside Kevin, without giving too much away. Yeah. For me, it will probably be much like Unbreakable, just like the second to opening scene, where Dennis gets in the car and kidnaps the girls. I think it sets up the film perfectly, and you kind of get the idea of what's going down without even knowing that there are like multiple personalities in this person. It's just that these girls have been taken by this individual, and he has a very curious way about him. So I think that's a good setup right there, and with any luck, then you're dialed in for the rest of the picture.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really strong pick.
Now, moving on, what would you say is your favorite scene in the movie? The ending notwithstanding, because that is both our favorite scene, obviously. So, for variety's sake, if you had to pick a second favorite scene, what would it be?
So now, the lifting the scene that you just said, I think that opening scene where they are kidnapped by Dennis specifically, because I love how much that gives you in that one little scene. It gives you so much. It sets the tone for the movie. It lets you know what kind of movie you're watching and what it's trying to accomplish and how it's going to tell the story. It tells you a lot about your protagonist, your antagonist, and it's scary. So, yeah, I like that opening scene.
So for me, there's a scene towards the end of the film when Casey's just escaped and she stumbles upon Dr. Fletcher's dead body, and she sees the note that Dr. Fletcher wrote, which is "Say his name, Kevin Wendell Crumb." And then the beast enters the room and he's like crawling up the wall. It's very intense and kind of, incredible sequence. And Casey says his name, she says it again, and then she says it a third time, and the third time Kevin snaps out of it, and the real Kevin, the real person comes out.
The original personality.
Yeah. Comes out very briefly. We get to see him realize what has been done by his hands, not him per se, but it's still his body. He still feels responsible that he has killed people, and he basically tells Casey to kill him. Tells him where a shotgun is and where the bullets are.
Yep.
And as soon as he's just like, just kill me, the other personalities start coming out one by one. And James McAvoy in this sequence is just kind of on fire, just jumping from personality to personality.
Killing it. Just incredible.
I don't know, man. It's just kind of a pretty astounding sequence. Yep. So
sure is. And Anya Taylor-Joy the entire time giving you a believable, terrified girl.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, McAvoy is putting on this masterclass.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Yeah.
Great scene.
So that would be my pick for sure.
Oh yeah.
What would you if you had to rate this rewatch value out of 10? What do you think you would put it at?
So I give this movie a rewatch value of 8. I don't think it's absolutely peak rewatchability, but this movie has been out for 8 years, and in 8 years I've watched it 6 times, and I've liked it no less any time that I've watched it. And I think that that's really telling. I think that it's done it for me pretty much the same way every single time.
Yeah.
6 times in 8 years is not too bad. Showed it to my girlfriend. She really loves the movie. She enjoyed rewatching it with me. So yeah, I think pretty strong rewatch value, pretty strong staying power as a movie.
Yeah. I'm in the same ballpark. This is as I've said a number of times already on this podcast, that like this movie just goes right from the get-go. Like, 5 minutes in and we are going. So in that sense, it's a very engaging film. The performances are really engaging. You definitely kind of got to be in a certain mood,
sure,
to get down with this film.
100%.
That would probably be, really the only reason that like I would knock off a couple of points here and there. But otherwise, like once I'm in this movie, I'm in it. Like, there's no doubt about that. So yeah, I'm right there with you. So that'll be a full on 8 out of 10 for the rewatch value. With that said, we are going to move on over to the Jony horror score. So here at the Jony horror score, we are going to discuss a little bit about how the film was received, and then give our final rankings and our thoughts. So, reception. Split grossed $138.3 million in the United States and Canada and $140.2 million in other territories for a worldwide gross of $278.5 million against a production budget of $9 million. Deadline calculated that the film made a net profit of $68.2 million when factoring together all the expenses and revenues. It had grossed a profit of $105.1 million with over 2,000% return on investment, making it the most profitable film of 2017. In North America, the film was released alongside XXX, The Return of Xander Cage, The Resurrection of Gavin Stone, and The Founder, as well as the wide expansion of 20th Century Women. And it was initially expected to gross between 20 and 25 million from 3,038 theaters in its opening weekend. It made $2 million from its Thursday night previews at 2,295 theaters, doubling the $1 million it made by Shyamalan's The Visit in 2015, and $14.6 million on its first day, increasing weekend estimates to 30 to 37 million. It ended up opening to 40.2 million, finishing first at the box office. In its second weekend, the film made 26.3 million, again topping the box office. In its third week, it again topped the box office, this time with 14.6 million, becoming the first time a Shyamalan film finished at number 1 for 3 weeks straight since The Sixth Sense in 1999. Not half bad.
Not bad.
All right, the critical response. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 78% based on 312 reviews with an average rating of 6.5 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, Split serves up a dramatic tour de force for James McAvoy in multiple roles and finds writer-director M. Night Shyamalan returning resoundingly to thrilling form. Metacritic reports a weighted average of 62 out of 100 based on 47 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audience polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale, while ComScore reported filmgoers gave it a 78% overall positive score, and a 54% definite recommend. John Hoffman of The Guardian gave the film 4 stars out of 5, stating it to be a masterful blend of Hitchcock horror and therapy. Also writing for The Guardian, Steve Rose had a strong praise for McAvoy, opinioning that the actor does a fine and fearless job selling his character's varied persona. He commended McAvoy's ability to switch personalities in one scene toward the end of the film, saying, "It's like the T-1000 at the end of Terminator 2, but there are no special effects here, just acting."
It's a good call.
It is a great call. I'm picturing that scene right next to...
It's funny because when you brought up that scene, that was what came to my mind.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Excuse me. I needed a sip of whiskey. This is the second time I've read all this, by the way. Christy Lemire, writing for RogerEbert.com, gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, describing it as an exciting return to form and a thrilling reminder of what a technical master Shyamalan can be. All his virtuoso camera work is on display, his lifelong loving homage to Alfred Hitchcock, which includes, as always, inserting himself in a cameo. And then the twist, that there is no big twist, is one of the most refreshing parts of all. Kate Muir of The Times gave the film 3 out of 5 stars, writing that it is full of plot holes, but McAvoy's joyful and menacingly lunatic performance papers over most of them.
We would like to point out that we want to know what those plot holes are.
Yeah.
And I think you're boring for saying plot holes. Only boring people with nothing to say bring up plot holes.
Congratulations, you're boring.
Congrats.
David Edelstein of New York Magazine was critical of the film, writing, "Shyamalan has returned to what he loves to do, use cheap horror tropes to create his own harebrained mythos." And added, Shim Night, y'all. It's 1 in the morning. What do you want from me? Though Shyamalan doesn't use a lot of blood and split, there's barely any. His framing sexualizes the torture of the other 2 teenage girls in a way I found reprehensible, and his depictions of childhood sexual abuse are clinically accurate enough to make anyone with experience of such things feel sick. I think it makes people who don't have experience with such things feel sick, but that's...
I think it makes any healthy person feel sick. I think that was the point.
Yeah.
I also think the exploitation complaint is a little bit overblown because I do think there's a nod to exploitation cinema there to a degree, but I also think some of it is just the story of like what they are dealing with and going through. Like, this is a creepy situation for these girls and it's a creepy situation for us, and that's just part of the story, I think acting like this is like a I don't know, Dario Argento film or something is a little bit silly.
I'm a big fan of Dario Argento.
I know you are, but this isn't really like that, right?
No.
Yeah.
This is hardly like a giallo film.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is not that. So to me, that's a little bit of a silly complaint.
The film has been referred to as the first supervillain origin story, the first time a film has been completely devoted to the origins of a villain as opposed to the origins of a superhero. And it has also been described as Hollywood's first stealth sequel, with The Hollywood Reporter calling the ending reveal one of the most shocking surprises in cinema history.
Word.
100% could not agree more. On that note, one of the most shocking and surprising endings in cinema history, Kalen. The audience is dying to know. What are your final thoughts and rankings?
I really love this flick. I think it's a great little horror movie. I think it's a great little Hitchcockian thriller. I'm really big on... So, you know this about me, but like if you said horror, superheroes, Hitchcockian, elevated thriller, like do you want to watch that
your
movie?
heart is a rock right now.
Right,
You're saying that.
That's 100% my speed, right? That's everything that I like in movies. So this movie is very much for me. I like it a lot. I think this movie has a lot of staying power for me. What I had said last time, to say it again, I probably rank this movie as like an 8.5 out of 10 type of movie. But there are 8.5 out of 10 types of movies that you watch and you put away and you don't really think about. They don't really stay with you. This is the kind of 8.5 out of 10 kind of movie that's going to stay with me.
Yeah.
There's a movie that I will continue to revisit. And yeah, for me personally, this is a modern classic.
I am at a 7.5 out of 10. As I said just a moment ago, like you got to be kind of like in the zone to watch this movie. While I very much am in awe of James McAvoy and his just total immersion into this character, and Anya Taylor-Joy is just so fantastic in everything she does, and Shyamalan is just absolutely on fire. What it comes down to is like, this is not like a story I find myself really wanting to go back to. It'd be kind of like if, we just sat in the well with the girl from Silence of the Lambs and she had to try and deal with Buffalo Bill, and that was just the movie that we got. So in those terms, it's fairly bleak, and then you add in teenage girls being eaten alive and children being sexually abused. Like this is you gotta kind of. It's not a fun movie,
No,
so
there's a lot of bleak to this movie.
But as a part of the Unbreakable universe, it is essential viewing. And like, I will never ever for the rest of my life forget that moment in the cinema when I realized that this was the long-awaited sequel to Unbreakable. And for that, it will always, always, always hold the most special place in my heart, because I got the surprise ending that I've never gotten before in my life, and probably will never get afterwards.
Yeah, I mean...
So, all that said, that's... You're at 8.5, I'm at a 7.5. We got a solid 8 out of 10 for the Jony Horror Podcast for Split. Before we close things out, if you were going to feature this as a double feature at the Jony Horror Drive-In, what would you put it with?
Well, you already picked the very best one, but I was thinking of a movie that would be a little bit similar, but also a good palate cleanser after watching this movie. And I came to Us, Jordan Peele's film Us, which is definitely scary, but I think is maybe a little bit more fun than this movie is.
There's definitely a substantial more comedic bits in Us.
Yeah, there's more funny in Us, and there's a little bit more. I don't know. I think Us just leaves you a little bit less sad, maybe.
Well, I mean, without spoiling anything, it does end with like the entire world holding hands, singing a song.
Hey,
so you know,
yeah, real positive ending there. It's true.
And my pick, as you referenced, that I kind of stumbled upon in this episode.
Perfect.
Would be Psycho. You got two boys with mommy issues dealing with multiple personalities and going all crazy on girls.
Mm-hmm.
Ah! So,
and also the fact that Split is such an homage to Hitchcock, and Psycho is kind of the epitome of Hitchcock, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think either one of those would be I would do back to back. Like I would watch. I would do Split and Us, and then Psycho and Split. I'd watch it all just like that. I think that'd be a fun quadrilogy as the Alien box set that was released in 2003 once put. There you go. That's a fun reference for you kids. Well, on that note, we are fucking out of our minds. Thank you guys so much. If you have made it all the way to the end of this podcast with us, we have really, really enjoyed this ride on Eastrail so far. We are more than halfway done now with, totally not the most, what's the word? Complex, sort of divisive sequel to come,
definitely.
Arguably will probably be even longer than Unbreakable when we record it, because there's a lot to unpack in that third and final entry in the Eastrail 177 trilogy. But we are looking forward to doing it, and we're looking forward to having you with us. So, for the time being, I am one of your hosts, Jony Horror, and with me, my co-host, partner in crime, #1 movie critic, and most handsome guy out there, Kalen Behrman. We are the Jony Horror Podcast, and we are wishing you all very well. You kids, be good to each other, be half-decent human beings, and we will see you motherfuckers on the flip side.
Peace.
Adios, muchachos! Is that you knocking on wood, hoping that we recorded it this time? I've been getting up every 5 minutes!
Hopefully we got it all that time.
Fuck!